So originally I was going to do a giant, Harmon Smith video and responding to this, but he said something in particular that kind of connected with me, and I figured I'd just kind of, talk about it. And that's Japanese games. Now, for the record, I'm going to say this right now. I am not saying all Japanese games suck. In fact, at times I find myself really enjoying Japanese games. But there's a problem with them. And I think Japanese games have this one giant problem. They kind of are outdated. There was a clip a long time ago. I don't know if you guys actually remember this whole thing, but Phil Fish was a indie game developer. He was actually part of the indie game, the movie documentary. I actually recommend people check it out. Damn nose hairs, right? But he made a statement that, while at the time it was very controversial, I kind of understood what he was saying, and that is that Japanese games, for the most part, have this tendency that they over-explain things, and there's other things I have personal gripes with. I hate the fact that a lot of the games over rely on text. They don't use voice actors. And the English translations of these, Japanese games, let's be real, can be pretty bad unless they're on board right away. And I think what Phil Fish was trying to get across is that Japan just has this weird tendency to do things that are kind of dated, like animations that just take a little bit too long. I know people give Sony a hard time, and I 100% understand this. People give Sony such a hard time about long cinematics. There are Japanese games out there like Persona 5, a game I really enjoy. I still think it's a fun game, but there's long segments without any gameplay. I mean, like, to the point that I felt like I was breaking my X button. It's just because I just kept the dialogue going. It's like, Jesus Christ, I have to go like through 2 hours of dialogue just to get to that 10 minutes of gameplay. And, well, I'm not saying all Japanese games do that. It's a common thing, to the point where if there's a JRPG announced, I just kind of lose interest. Because, like, oh, I know exactly what it's going to be like. It's going to be a turn-based JRPG, and going to have these long-ass story segments that just take away from the experience. And I'm going to say this right now, and I'm not, trying to, dick ride Sony or anything here, but I think Sony's developers have found a perfect balance of cinematics and gameplay. I mean, take, for example, God of War 2018. In God of War 2018, there's not really a tutorial. You're just learning the game as it progresses. You're simplifying it for the player because you're making the player actually interact with what people would call the tutorial elements, instead of sitting there and reading a whole, thing. Plus, voice acting, motion capture, all that stuff really helps, draw the player in. But when all you're doing is reading a text and all you're doing is, maybe hearing occasional dialogue, it really pulls you out of the experience, or at least for me. And yeah, I think that Japanese developers just are a little dated. Now, am I sitting here saying they're all dated? No, because like games like Final Fantasy 16, from what it looks like, it's going to have dialogue. And it's going to be all text. But it does feel like Japan's just still a little dated. I mean, hell, take for example a game like Yakuza. Don't get me wrong, I like Yakuza. Yakuza 0 I would call as one of the best fucking, action games I've played. But there's a lot of dialogue in that doesn't have a voice acting, and I feel like if they really want to get the player invested into the story, like really pull us in, they need to learn to bridge the dialogue and the text together. And also, it would have helped if they would have stuck to one style of how they were telling their story instead of like the three different ways they were doing it in game, still images. I was just like, oh, Christ. But that's my personal gripe. Like I said, this all came from watching a Harmon Smith video. And yeah, just, I feel like Japan's just a little dated. I'm not sitting here saying it's all bad. In fact, some of those games, like I mentioned, are good. It's just the little hiccups, the little things that are like, why are they still doing this? Why is this still being done in their games? And maybe it's a studio decision, maybe it's a creative decision, but I feel like it's time for some of these companies to kind of get with the times. But what do you guys think? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think I'm right? Make sure to leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that YouTube other and BS. This is That PlayStation Gamer signing out. Just saying, man, Japan, you could give the times a little bit more. Be a little easier for your players, and who knows, maybe the players will actually get more invested into your stories. Peace out and have a good day.